I never thought a book club would change my life. But there I was, clutching my well-worn copy of Modern Urban Spaces as I walked into the Kansas City Community Center that warm summer evening. The reading group coordinator had mentioned something about a special focus on architecture and design books this month, which piqued my interest enough to drag me away from my drafting table. The meeting room was already half full when I arrived. My eyes immediately locked onto a striking blonde woman in a crisp white blouse, her green eyes focused intently on the same book I was holding. She sat alone, elegant fingers tracing the cover's embossed lettering. Something about her presence commanded attention, though she wasn't doing anything to demand it. "First time here?" The coordinator's cheerful voice startled me. I nodded, introducing myself as Nina Smith, trying not to let my gaze drift back to the blonde. Perfect timing. "We're just about to start discussing urban development theory." I found a seat across from the blonde, who I soon learned was Elaine Taylor. As the discussion began, I found myself increasingly drawn into heated debates about sustainable architecture and community spaces. Elaine's perspectives challenged mine in ways that were both frustrating and exhilarating. "The problem with modern architects," Elaine declared during one particularly spirited exchange, "is that they often prioritize aesthetics over functionality." Her green eyes sparked with conviction as she spoke. "That's a rather broad generalization," I countered, leaning forward. "Some of us actually consider both." The way her eyebrow arched at my response sent an unexpected flutter through my chest. The 2-hour session flew by, and before I knew it, people were gathering their things to leave. Elaine approached me as I was collecting my notes. "Want to continue this discussion over coffee? There's a great place around the corner." At the coffee shop, our conversation flowed effortlessly from architecture to personal stories. Elaine was a real estate developer with a passion for sustainable building practices. The way she spoke about her projects with such passion and precision made me lose track of time. "Wait, it's almost 10? I glanced at my watch, surprised. The coffee shop was nearly empty, and the barista was giving us pointed looks. "Time flies when you're debating the merits of mixed-use development." Elaine smiled, gathering her things. "Same time next week?" As I walked to my car that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. The warm summer air carried the scent of blooming jasmine, and Kansas City's skyline glittered against the dark sky. I found myself already looking forward to next week's meeting, though I told myself it was purely for the intellectual stimulation. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a story that would reshape both my personal and professional life in ways I never imagined. That simple book club meeting had set in motion a series of events that would challenge everything I thought I knew about myself, my career, and what it means to find unexpected connection in a city of millions. Monday morning hit me with an unexpected curveball. I was reviewing project files in my office when my boss, Richard, stuck his head in. "Nina, client meeting in 10, big potential project." He paused, then added with a smirk, "Try not to scare this one away with your perfectionism." I rolled my eyes as I gathered my materials, but when I walked into the conference room, my heart nearly stopped. There sat Elaine Taylor, looking even more stunning in her charcoal business suit than she had at the book club. Our eyes met, and I caught a flicker of recognition before her professional mask slipped into place. "Miss Smith will be leading the design team," Richard was saying, but I barely heard him over the sudden rushing in my ears. I forced myself to focus, to maintain composure as we discussed the sustainable housing development Elaine's company was planning. Throughout the meeting, we maintained strict professionalism, though I caught myself multiple times studying the way she tucked her blonde hair behind her ear when she was making an important point, or how her green eyes lit up when discussing environmental impact considerations. "The timeline is aggressive," Elaine stated, her voice carrying that same passion I'd heard during our coffee shop discussion. "We need preliminary designs within 3 weeks." "That's not impossible," I heard myself say, "but it would require extensive collaboration." Our eyes met briefly across the conference table, and I felt that same flutter in my chest from the book club. The meeting concluded with our firm securing the contract. As everyone filed out, Elaine lingered behind. "Well, this is unexpected," she said softly, once we were alone. "Quite," I managed, shuffling papers that didn't need shuffling. "I hope this won't make things awkward." "Only if we let it," she replied with a slight smile. "Late-night working sessions might be necessary to meet that deadline." Over the next few days, we settled into a rhythm of professional interaction, but there was an undercurrent of tension that made every meeting electric. Late one evening, as we pored over drafts in my office, the air conditioning shut down automatically. "Damn building systems," I muttered, standing to open a window. The night air carried the scent of approaching rain. "Sometimes systems need to be challenged," Elaine said quietly. She had moved to stand beside me, our shoulders almost touching as we looked out over the city lights. The moment stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and I turned to find her watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. The city lights played across her features, softening them. "Nina," she whispered, and I knew we were both remembering our animated discussions at the book club, the easy laughter over coffee, the growing awareness of something more than professional admiration. The first drops of rain hit the window as she leaned in, her fingers brushing my arm. The touch sent electricity through me, and for a moment I forgot about projects and deadlines and professional boundaries. Her lips met mine, soft and questioning, and the world seemed to stop. A crash of thunder broke the spell. We jumped apart, both slightly breathless, just as security knocked on the door for their nightly rounds. Reality crashed back in, and we quickly gathered our things, avoiding eye contact. "We should probably call it a night," I managed, my voice unsteady. "Probably wise," she agreed, but her eyes told a different story. As we walked to our cars, the rain now falling steadily, I couldn't help but wonder how we would maintain professional distance after this. The project suddenly seemed much more complicated than any architectural challenge I'd faced before. That night, lying in bed listening to the storm, I realized that my carefully ordered life was about to become wonderfully, terrifyingly complex. The question wasn't if things would change, but how much I was willing to risk for the electricity I felt whenever Elaine was near. The sustainable housing project consumed our days and nights. After that rainy evening in my office, Elaine and I developed an unspoken dance of professional distance, punctuated by moments of intense connection. We threw ourselves into the work, perhaps hoping the blueprints and sustainability reports would distract us from the growing tension between us. Saturday site visits became our ritual. The empty lot where the development would rise sat on the outskirts of Kansas City, offering sweeping views of the skyline. One particularly crisp morning, we walked the perimeter, discussing solar panel placement. "The southern exposure is perfect," Elaine noted, her breath visible in the cool air. She had traded her usual business attire for jeans and a fitted jacket, and I found myself stealing glances when she wasn't looking. "The challenge will be maximizing natural light while maintaining privacy," I replied, focusing on my tablet. "The units need to feel open without creating a fishbowl effect." "Speaking of privacy," she said softly, "we should probably talk about what happened in your office." I kept my eyes on the screen, though the numbers had become meaningless blur. "Probably. I'm not sorry it happened," she continued, her voice steady. "But I understand if you want to keep things strictly professional." Finally, I looked up. The morning sun caught her hair, creating a halo effect that made my heart skip. "I'm not sorry either," I admitted. "But this project is important," she finished. "I know. My company has a lot riding on it too." We spent the next hour discussing window placement and community spaces, but something had shifted. The professional barrier we'd maintained started to crack, revealing glimpses of personal history. "My last relationship ended because of work," Elaine shared as we sat in her car reviewing notes. "They couldn't understand the demands of this industry." "Mine too," I replied, surprised by the coincidence. "It's hard to find someone who gets it." Our eyes met, and the understanding that passed between us felt more intimate than any kiss. The following week brought endless meetings and revision requests. One evening, as thunder rolled outside, we found ourselves alone in the office again. The memory of our last stormy encounter hung heavy in the air. "The community garden layout needs adjusting," Elaine said, leaning over my shoulder to point at the screen. Her perfume, subtle and sophisticated, made it hard to concentrate. "We could expand it here," I suggested, trying to ignore how close she was. "Create more shared space." Lightning flashed, and suddenly the power went out. In the darkness, I felt Elaine's hand find mine. "Nina?" she whispered, and this time there was no hesitation. The kiss was different from our first, deliberate, certain. Her hands tangled in my hair as I pulled her closer, years of professional restraint melting away in the darkness. The storm raged outside as we discovered each other. our sighs mingling with the sound of rain against the windows. When the lights flickered back on, we were breathless, disheveled. Elaine's lipstick was smudged, and my blouse had come untucked. We stared at each other for a long moment, reality slowly seeping back in. "We should finish the garden revisions," I said finally, smoothing my hair. "Right," she agreed, but her smile held a promise that had nothing to do with work. As we left that night, walking close but not touching, I realized we had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The project would continue, deadlines would loom, but something fundamental had changed. In the space between professional collaboration and personal connection, we had found something rare and precious. The drive home was a blur of emotions: excitement, fear, desire. Kansas City's lights seemed brighter somehow, as if reflecting the spark that had ignited between us. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, I let myself feel the simple joy of falling for someone who understood both my professional passion and my personal truth. Little did we know that our carefully balanced world was about to be shaken to its foundations. But that night, surrounded by architectural plans and the lingering scent of rain, everything felt perfectly, wonderfully possible. Keeping our relationship under wraps at work became an exhausting game of pretense. Every morning meeting required careful choreography, maintaining professional distance, while trying not to let our eyes linger too long on each other. The simple act of reviewing blueprints became an exercise in self-control, especially when Elaine's fingers would accidentally brush against mine over the drafting table. "The client meeting went well," Richard commented one afternoon, catching me in the break room. "Miss Taylor seems particularly pleased with your work." I focused on stirring my coffee, hoping he couldn't see the flush creeping up my neck. "She's very invested in the project," I replied neutrally, though my mind flashed to the stolen kiss we'd shared in the stairwell just hours earlier. The situation became more complicated when Sarah, Elaine's best friend and legal counsel, dropped by our office unexpectedly. I was reviewing site plans when she appeared in my doorway, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of my workspace. "So you're the architect Elaine can't stop talking about," she said, closing the door behind her. My heart rate doubled, but I kept my expression professional. "Miss Taylor and I have been working closely on the sustainable housing project," I began, but Sarah cut me off with a knowing smile. "Please, Nina. Elaine and I have been friends since college. I know her tells." She sat down across from me, her expression softening, and I haven't seen her this happy in years. Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by concern. "We're trying to keep things quiet, the project." "Your secret's safe with me," Sarah assured me. "But you should know, you're not as subtle as you think you are, at least not to anyone paying attention." That conversation with Sarah marked a turning point. Having an ally made things both easier and more complicated. She covered for us when needed, but her presence also reminded us that our secret wasn't as well hidden as we'd hoped. The real test came during the International Architecture Exhibition at the Kansas City Convention Center. Elaine's company was a major sponsor, and my firm had several designs on display. We couldn't avoid attending together, but the public setting made every interaction feel dangerous. I wore a navy blue dress that Elaine had once mentioned she liked, while she chose a black pantsuit that made it difficult for me to focus on small talk with potential clients. We circled each other throughout the evening, maintaining professional distance while stealing glances across the crowded room. "Your sustainable design concepts are revolutionary," one of the judges commented, gesturing to my display. "Miss Taylor's company made an excellent choice partnering with your firm." "Thank you," I managed, catching Elaine's eye across the room. She was deep in conversation with a group of investors, but I could see the slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Later, we found ourselves momentarily alone in a quiet corridor, displaying architectural photographs. The muffled sounds of the reception filtered through the walls. "You look beautiful tonight," Elaine whispered, standing close enough that I could smell her perfume but far enough away to appear professional, if anyone walked by. "So do you," I replied, my fingers itching to reach for her hand. "This is torture." "Worth it, though," she smiled, then quickly stepped back as voices approached. The evening ended with both of us receiving accolades for the project's innovative design, but all I could think about was the way Elaine's hand had brushed against mine during the closing speeches. That night, as we sat in my car in the empty parking garage, the tension finally broke. "I'm tired of hiding," Elaine confessed, her fingers intertwined with mine. "Me too," I admitted, But the project will be finished in a few months, she finished. Then what? I didn't have an answer. But as I drove home that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The fear of discovery was becoming overshadowed by a different fear. The fear of losing what we had built together, both professionally and personally. The city lights blurred past my window, and I realized that sooner or later, we would have to choose between maintaining our careful facade and embracing the truth of what we'd become to each other. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The news hit like a thunderbolt on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday morning. I was reviewing the latest modifications for the sustainable housing project when Richard called an emergency all-hands meeting. The tension in the conference room was palpable as he delivered the bombshell. Our firm was being acquired by a larger corporation. This merger will strengthen our market position, Richard announced, but his usual confidence seemed forced. However, there will be some organizational changes. My eyes immediately sought out Elaine, who had been invited as a key client representative. She sat perfectly still, her face a mask of professional composure, but I could see the slight tremor in her hands as she gripped her tablet. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty. Rumors flew through the office like autumn leaves in a storm. Some people started clearing their desks preemptively, while others frantically updated their portfolios. Through it all, Elaine and I maintained our professional facade, though our stolen moments became more desperate, more intense. My company's board is nervous, she confided during a late-night phone call. They're talking about pulling out of the project entirely. Before I could process that gut punch, the other shoe dropped. The HR department began calling people in one by one. When my turn came, the news was delivered with corporate efficiency. My position was being eliminated due to redundancy with the acquiring firm's team. I sat in my car in the parking garage, staring at the termination papers, when my phone buzzed with a text from Elaine. Meet me at our spot. Our spot was the rooftop garden of an old converted warehouse, where we'd sometimes escape for lunch. I found her already there, looking out over the Kansas City skyline. They terminated me too, she said without turning around. The board decided to clean house after the project cancellation. Elaine, I'm so sorry. I moved to stand beside her, our shoulders touching. Don't be, she replied, finally turning to face me. In the fading sunlight, her green eyes were bright with something that looked like hope. Maybe this is our chance. Our chance? She reached for my hand, no longer caring who might see. To stop hiding. To build something of our own. The kiss that followed was different from our previous stolen moments. It was open, defiant, full of possibility. When we finally pulled apart, I rested my forehead against hers, breathing in the moment. I've been thinking, she continued, her fingers still intertwined with mine. We make a damn good team, professionally and personally. Why not start our own firm? The idea took root immediately, growing stronger with each passing second. We stayed on that rooftop until the stars came out, plotting and planning, our professional setback transforming into personal opportunity. Later that night, in the quiet of my apartment, Elaine traced patterns on my arm as we lay together on the couch. Are you scared? She asked. Terrified, I admitted. But also excited. With you, I feel like anything's possible. Even taking on the established firms in Kansas City? Especially that. I turned to face her, suddenly serious. We know this market, we have connections, and most importantly, we have each other. She smiled, that brilliant smile that had first caught my attention at the book club, and kissed me softly. Then let's show them what we can do. As we drifted off to sleep, I realized that losing our jobs might have been the best thing that could have happened to us. Sometimes, when everything falls apart, it creates space for something better to be built in its place. We'd lost our positions, but we'd gained the freedom to be ourselves, to create something authentic, together. The city lights twinkled through the window, and I held Elaine closer, no longer afraid of who might see or what they might think. Tomorrow, we would begin building our new future, brick by brick, just like the buildings we designed. But tonight, we simply existed in the perfect moment of possibility, two architects ready to design not just buildings, but a life together. Starting our own architectural firm felt like jumping off a cliff and building our wings on the way down. Our first office was a converted industrial loft in downtown Kansas City, all exposed brick and massive windows. The space needed work, but that was part of its charm, a blank canvas for our shared vision. We should make this our first project, Elaine suggested as we stood in the empty space, sunlight streaming through dusty windows. Show potential clients what we can do with raw potential. The renovation became our testing ground. During the day, we worked on business plans and reached out to contacts. At night, we transformed the space, our personal styles merging into something uniquely ours. The physical labor was therapeutic, helping us process the upheaval of the past few weeks. Sarah, true to her supportive nature, helped us navigate the legal aspects of starting our business. You need to decide how to present yourselves to clients, she advised during one planning session. Being out might impact some conservative clients. We're not hiding anymore, Elaine declared, her hand finding mine under the table. Our work should speak for itself. Our first client meeting was with a small boutique hotel developer. I felt Elaine's calming presence beside me as we presented our portfolio and vision. The client seemed more interested in our innovative designs than our personal lives, and we left with a signed contract. That evening, celebrating in our half-renovated office, the reality of our situation hit me. We're really doing this, I marveled, looking around at the space we'd created. Elaine pulled me close, her lips finding mine in the fading sunlight. The kiss deepened, and soon we were christening our new office in a way that definitely wasn't in the business plan. The feel of her skin against mine, the way she whispered my name, the city lights creating patterns on the ceiling, it all felt like a dream. The next few weeks flew by in a blur of client meetings and renovation work. We installed a state-of-the-art drafting station, created a welcoming reception area, and transformed the back room into a cozy meeting space. Every decision was made together, every success celebrated as a team. Word spread about the new firm started by two former corporate architects. Our innovative approach to sustainable design attracted attention, and soon we had a steady stream of inquiries. Some clients were drawn to our fresh perspective, others to our commitment to environmental responsibility. Remember when we first met at that book club? I asked one evening, as we finished installing the last of our office furniture. Did you ever imagine we'd end up here? Elaine paused, hammer in hand. I knew there was something special about you from that first argument about urban development. But this? She gestured around the office, then pulled me close. This exceeds every dream I had. The renovation's completion coincided with our first major presentation to a potential client. The space spoke volumes about our design philosophy, modern yet warm, professional yet personal. As we guided the clients through our vision for their project, I caught glimpses of our own journey in the details around us. The reclaimed wood conference table where we'd shared late-night takeout, the window seat where we'd planned our future, the wall of windows that had witnessed our transformation from corporate architects to independent businesswomen. That night, after the clients left with promises of future collaboration, Elaine and I stood in our completed office. The Kansas City skyline sparkled beyond our windows, a reminder of all the possibilities still ahead. We built this, Elaine said softly, her arms wrapping around my waist from behind. Not just the office, but everything it represents. I leaned back into her embrace, feeling more at home than I ever had in my corporate corner office. We had created more than just a business. We'd built a foundation for our future, both professional and personal. The road ahead would have its challenges, but facing them together made everything seem possible. As the city hummed below us, I turned in Elaine's arms and kissed her, no longer concerned about who might see through the windows. We were architects of our own destiny now, building something beautiful, one day at a time. The call came on a Tuesday morning. A major mixed-use development project, the kind we used to handle at our old firm, was up for grabs. Several established architectural firms were competing for it, and somehow, our little startup had made the shortlist. They want us to present next week, Elaine announced, her green eyes sparkling with excitement. This could be our breakthrough moment. We threw ourselves into preparation, working late into the night, our drafting table cluttered with preliminary sketches and sustainable design concepts. The pressure was intense, but there was also a thrilling sense of freedom in approaching the project our way, without corporate constraints. Remember how we used to handle these at the old firm? I asked one evening, massaging my neck as I stared at our presentation boards. All bureaucracy and buzzwords, Elaine replied, coming up behind me to work the knots from my shoulders. This time, we're doing it our way. Our way meant incorporating cutting-edge sustainable technologies while maintaining the human element in every design choice. We worked seamlessly together, anticipating each other's thoughts, finishing each other's sentences. The design evolved into something that reflected both our professional expertise and our personal connection. The presentation day arrived with a mix of nerves and determination. The client panel included several familiar faces from our corporate days, and I could sense their skepticism as we set up our materials. "Think they're expecting us to fail?" I whispered to Elaine as we waited to begin. "Let them," she replied with quiet confidence. "We know what we can do." The presentation flowed perfectly. We tag-teamed the technical aspects, our natural chemistry evident in how we built on each other's points. When we unveiled our innovative approach to community spaces, I saw the skepticism in the panel's eyes transform into genuine interest. "This is unlike anything we've seen," the lead developer said afterward. "You've managed to combine practical functionality with genuine innovation." 2 days later, we got the news. The project was ours. The celebration in our office that evening was sweet vindication. Sarah arrived with champagne, and for once we allowed ourselves to truly revel in our success. "To the underdogs," Sarah toasted, grinning broadly. "You've shocked the hell out of everyone, you know that?" Later, after Sarah left, Elaine and I slow danced between our drafting tables, the city lights creating our own private light show through the windows. The champagne had left a pleasant buzz, but the real intoxication came from our shared triumph. "We did it," I murmured into her hair, breathing in her familiar scent. "Was there ever any doubt?" she asked, pulling back to look at me. The love in her eyes made my heart skip. The kiss that followed was tender, unhurried, filled with all the emotion of our journey together. We'd proved ourselves not just as architects, but as partners in every sense of the word. The news of our success spread quickly through Kansas City's architectural community. Suddenly, our phones were ringing with potential clients, and industry publications wanted interviews. We handled the attention carefully, always ensuring our work remained the focus while never hiding our personal relationship. "Did you see this?" Elaine asked one morning, showing me an article in the local business journal. It highlighted our innovative designs but also mentioned us as partners, both professionally and personally, without sensation or scandal. "Times are changing," I observed, wrapping my arms around her waist. "For the better," she agreed, leaning back against me. "Though I'm more interested in what we're building next." The question held multiple meanings, and we both knew it. Our professional success had created a solid foundation, but we were building something far more precious in the quiet moments between deadlines and meetings. That evening, reviewing plans for our next project, I watched Elaine sketching at her drafting table, her face intent with concentration. The setting sun painted her blonde hair gold, and I was struck by how far we'd come from that first meeting at the book club. We'd won more than just a contract. We'd won the right to be ourselves, to create on our own terms, to love without hiding. In the competitive world of architecture, we'd found our niche not despite who we were, but because of it. As if sensing my thoughts, Elaine looked up and smiled, that brilliant smile that still made my heart race. "Ready to start the next design?" she asked. "With you? Always," I replied, meaning far more than just architectural plans. The email from my mother landed like a bomb in my inbox. "Surprise, Dad and I will be in Kansas City next week. Can't wait to see your new office." My hands shook as I read it. My conservative parents still thought I was just going through a career phase with the new firm. They had no idea about Elaine, about us, about any of it. "We'll handle it," Elaine assured me when I told her, though I could see the tension in her shoulders. We'd been so focused on building our business that we'd avoided discussing families, particularly my traditional Midwest parents. The week flew by too quickly. Soon I was standing in our office lobby, watching my parents approach through the glass doors. Mom's eyes widened as she took in the modern space, the awards already lining our walls, and Elaine's presence beside me. "Nina, darling," Mom air-kissed my cheeks while Dad examined our company logo. "And this must be your business partner?" "Elaine Taylor." Elaine stepped forward, professional mask firmly in place. "It's wonderful to finally meet you both." Lunch was an exercise in careful conversation. My parents asked about projects, clients, and future plans, carefully avoiding any personal questions. I could feel Elaine's supportive presence beside me, our knees touching under the table. "You seem different," Mom observed over dessert, her eyes sharp. "More confident." "I am," I replied simply, fighting the urge to reach for Elaine's hand. The tension finally broke that evening when Dad discovered Elaine's expertise in historical architecture preservation. Their animated discussion about Kansas City's architectural heritage seemed to ease some of Mom's obvious concerns. But just as things were settling, another storm hit. An email from Elaine's ex-partner, Victoria, announced her return to Kansas City. She was now a prominent real estate developer and wanted to reconnect over potential projects. "She always had perfect timing," Elaine muttered, staring at her phone. I tried to ignore the knot in my stomach as I remembered how Victoria had hurt Elaine years ago. The meeting with Victoria was everything I dreaded. She was tall, sophisticated, and clearly still held a torch for Elaine. Her eyes barely acknowledged my presence as she discussed a potential high-rise project. "Remember that vineyard in Napa?" she asked Elaine, touching her arm. "We should catch up properly, just the two of us." I watched Elaine's face carefully, my heart pounding, but Elaine simply smiled professionally and said, "Nina and I would be happy to review your proposal together." That evening, as we walked along the plaza, Elaine suddenly stopped. "You know you have nothing to worry about, right?" "I know," I said, though the relief in my voice was evident. "It's just been a week of ghosts." "The past is the past," she replied, pulling me close right there on the sidewalk. "This is my present and my future." The kiss was gentle but firm, a public declaration that meant more than any words. A few passers-by stared, but for once, I didn't care. Later that night, curled up in our favorite window seat at the office, watching the city lights, we finally talked about our fears, about my parents' subtle disapproval, about Victoria's reappearance, about the challenges still ahead. "We're architects," Elaine said softly, her fingers intertwined with mine. "We know better than anyone that the strongest structures are built to withstand pressure from all sides." "Is that what we're building?" I asked, thinking of the foundations we'd laid, both professional and personal. "Something even stronger," she replied, kissing my temple. "Something that will last." As we sat there, the city humming below us, I realized that facing these challenges had only made us stronger. My parents would either accept us or not. Victoria could try all she wanted. What we had built together, our firm, our relationship, our future, was solid enough to weather any storm. The next morning, I sent a careful but honest email to my parents, explaining everything. Elaine held my hand as I hit send, and I felt nothing but peace. Whatever came next, we would face it together, architects of our own destiny. The annual Architectural Innovation Summit in Kansas City was supposed to be about our latest sustainable design project. Instead, it became the moment that changed everything. We were scheduled to present our innovative approach to urban renewal, a project that had already garnered attention in industry circles. The conference room was packed with familiar faces from our professional past and present. I stood at the podium with Elaine beside me, feeling unusually nervous despite our thorough preparation. "Our approach combines traditional community values with cutting-edge sustainable technology," I began, clicking through our presentation slides. The audience seemed engaged, taking notes and nodding along. Then came the question and answer session. A reporter from the Architecture Today magazine raised his hand. "Your firm has made remarkable progress in just 1 year. Some suggest your success is due to your unique partnership. Care to comment?" The room fell silent. Elaine and I exchanged a quick glance. We'd known this moment would come eventually, but facing it in a room full of industry leaders made my heart race. "Our partnership is indeed unique," Elaine responded, her voice steady. "We bring complementary skills to both our designs and our business relationship." "And your personal relationship?" the reporter pressed. The silence in the room grew heavier. I could feel dozens of eyes on us, some curious, some uncomfortable, some supportive. In that moment, I realized we were tired of dancing around the truth. "Our personal relationship has enhanced our professional collaboration," I said clearly. "We're partners in every sense of the word. And that connection influences our understanding of creating spaces where people truly feel at home." The response was mixed. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others nodded in approval. Sarah, sitting in the front row, gave us a subtle thumbs up. The media coverage that followed was intense. Local business journals picked up the story, focusing initially on the novelty of our relationship before turning to our architectural innovations. Industry publications debated whether personal relationships between firm partners affected professional outcomes. "Look at this," Elaine said one morning, showing me an email from a young architect in Seattle. She says our openness gave her courage to come out at her firm. The publicity brought unexpected challenges and opportunities. Some conservative clients quietly withdrew their projects, but new ones emerged, attracted by our authenticity and innovative designs. We're trending on architectural Twitter, Sarah announced during lunch. The industry is talking about more than just your relationship. They're discussing how personal authenticity influences design philosophy. Our phones buzzed constantly with interview requests. We chose our responses carefully, always steering the conversation back to our work, while never denying who we were to each other. One evening, as we reviewed the latest press coverage in our office, Elaine suddenly laughed. "Remember how worried we were about being discovered?" I smiled, remembering our careful choreography in the early days. "Seems like another lifetime ago." "Being open has made us stronger," she said, pulling me close. "Both as architects and as partners." The summit's aftermath brought another surprise. A prestigious architecture magazine wanted to feature us in their Innovators of the Year issue. The photo shoot took place in our office, with the Kansas City skyline as backdrop. The photographer captured us working together at our drafting table, our natural synchronicity evident in every frame. "These are beautiful," the photographer said, showing us the previews. "You can see the connection in every shot." The article, when published, celebrated our professional achievements, while matter-of-factly acknowledging our relationship. It felt like a milestone, being recognized for our work while being fully ourselves. That night, celebrating with champagne in our office, we reflected on how far we'd come. The city lights twinkled through our windows, and I could see our reflection in the glass, two women who had found the courage to be authentic in both love and work. "What's next?" I asked, leaning into Elaine's embrace. "We keep building," she replied simply. "Together." The industry had seen us, acknowledged us, and ultimately accepted us. But more importantly, we had accepted ourselves, creating a foundation strong enough to support both our professional dreams and our personal truth. The decision to design our own home came naturally. After a year of creating spaces for others, we yearned to build something uniquely ours. We found the perfect lot overlooking the Kansas City skyline, with enough space for a garden and a home office. "We should incorporate everything we've learned," Elaine suggested one evening as we sat at our drafting table, preliminary sketches spread before us. "Make it a testament to our design philosophy." The process of designing our home became an intimate dance of compromise and creativity. Every detail reflected our shared experiences. The floor-to-ceiling windows reminiscent of our first office, the sustainable materials we'd championed in our projects, the perfect blend of our individual styles. "The master bathroom needs more natural light," I argued playfully, sketching modifications to our plans. "And the kitchen needs better flow," Elaine countered, her hand covering mine on the pencil. These creative disputes usually ended in kisses and revised drawings. Word spread through the architectural community about our personal project. Some colleagues were supportive, others skeptical. The local architecture blog even ran a piece speculating about how our relationship would influence the design. "They're missing the point," Sarah commented during a site visit. "This isn't just about two architects building a house together. It's about creating a home that reflects who you are." Construction began in early spring. We visited the site daily, watching our vision take shape. The contractors got used to seeing us there, arguing good-naturedly about details and making last-minute adjustments. Not everyone was enthusiastic about our project. Some neighbors expressed concerns about property values, thinly veiling their real objections. A few potential clients quietly withdrew their projects after learning about our personal investment in the house. "Let them talk," Elaine said one evening as we stood on our future balcony, watching the sunset. "We're building this for us, not them." The industry criticism came next. Traditional architects questioned our modern design choices, while modernists critiqued our incorporation of classical elements. But we stood firm, knowing that our home, like our relationship, didn't need to fit into predetermined categories. One rainy afternoon, as we sheltered in the partially completed structure, Elaine pulled me close. "Remember our first kiss in the office during that storm?" "How could I forget?" I smiled, breathing in the scent of fresh lumber and wet earth. "Look how far we've come," she whispered, gesturing to the emerging spaces around us. From hiding in the office to building our future in plain sight. The house became a symbol of our journey. Each completed section represented another step in our shared path. the foundation as solid as our partnership, the walls as transparent as our love had become, the sustainable systems as forward-thinking as our vision. Support came from unexpected places. A prestigious design magazine featured our project, praising its innovative blend of personal and professional elements. Young architects began requesting tours, inspired by how we'd integrated our relationship into our work. "You've created something remarkable," our contractor said during the final inspection. "This isn't just a house, it's a statement." As completion neared, we spent more time in the space, planning furniture placement and discussing color schemes. Each decision felt weightier than our professional projects, perhaps because this time we were building for ourselves. One evening, standing in our nearly finished living room, Elaine turned to me with tears in her eyes. "This is really happening, isn't it?" I pulled her close, understanding exactly what she meant. We'd built more than a house. We'd created a physical manifestation of our love story, a space that declared to the world who we were and what we meant to each other. The city lights sparkled through our carefully designed windows, and I could see our reflection in the glass, two women who had dared to build something authentic, both in love and architecture. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we had created a foundation strong enough to weather any storm. "Welcome home," I whispered, kissing her softly in the growing darkness. The nomination for the Urban Design Excellence Award came as a surprise. Our sustainable housing project, the one that had brought us together initially, had caught the attention of the international architectural community. The ceremony was scheduled for spring, just as our garden was beginning to bloom. "Full circle," Elaine mused as we prepared for the event. "Remember when we first pitched this project?" I watched her adjust her emerald gown in our bedroom mirror, still amazed at how perfectly she fit into the home we'd designed together. Back when we were trying so hard to maintain professional distance? The award ceremony was held in Kansas City's newest convention center, a building we'd actually consulted on. As we entered, I felt Elaine's hand slip into mine, a gesture that now felt as natural as breathing. The industry's elite filled the room, including faces from our past. Richard, our former boss, nodded respectfully from across the room. Victoria, Elaine's ex, was there too, representing her development firm, but their presence no longer carried the weight it once did. When they announced our win, the applause was genuine. Standing at the podium together, we shared a look that said more than words could convey. Our acceptance speech touched on sustainable design and community impact, but the personal undertones were clear to everyone. "Success isn't just about what you build," Elaine said into the microphone, her voice steady and sure. "It's about building with purpose, with authenticity, with love." The celebration continued at our home, where we'd prepared the garden for an intimate gathering. Sarah was there, of course, along with colleagues who'd become friends and clients who'd become supporters. The space we'd created together proved perfect for entertaining, just as we'd designed it to be. As twilight settled over Kansas City, our guests gathered in the garden. Fairy lights twinkled in the trees we'd planted together, and the fountain we'd designed provided a gentle backdrop of flowing water. "I have something to ask you," Elaine said quietly, leading me to the small meditation corner we'd created beneath the cherry trees. The same trees that had been mere saplings when we'd first moved in were now beginning to flower. My heart skipped as she took both my hands in hers. Our friends and colleagues gathered quietly around, seeming to know what was coming. "Nina Smith," she began, her green eyes bright with emotion. "You've been my partner in design and business and life. Will you make it official? Will you marry me?" The answer was as natural as the flow of our designs, as inevitable as the path that had led us here. "Yes," I whispered, then louder, "Yes." The garden erupted in cheers and congratulations. Sarah appeared with champagne, and toasts were made to our future. But what meant the most was the quiet moment we shared later that night, sitting on our custom-designed porch swing, looking out over the city we'd helped shape. "Did you ever imagine this?" I asked, my head resting on her shoulder. "That first day at the book club?" "I imagined something," she replied, playing with my ring finger. "But reality turned out even better than the design." The Kansas City skyline sparkled before us, a testament to the power of building something authentic. We'd created more than award-winning buildings. We'd built a life together, foundation by foundation, wall by wall, moment by moment. As we sat there, planning our future in the home we'd designed, I realized that every challenge we'd faced had only strengthened our bond. From hidden meetings in corporate offices to openly celebrating our love in our own garden, we'd transformed not just our lives, but perhaps, in some small way, the world around us. The night air carried the scent of cherry blossoms, and somewhere in the distance, a car horn honked. But in our garden, in our home, in our shared life, everything was exactly as we'd designed it to be. "I love you, architect," Elaine whispered. "I love you too," I replied, knowing that our greatest design project, our life together, was still unfolding, still growing, still being built with every passing day.